of movies that weren't such big blockbusters this season, what was the Office bomb of the summer?
Pixar's Lightyear,
And why was that such a flop?
because it was solo a Star Wars story all over again. It was a big budget, loosely connected origin story spin-off for a major character from a disconnected franchise, starring a different actor than the one associated with that marquee character. And nobody bothered to wonder if anyone actually wanted to see a standalone Buzz Lightyear movie. And although the movie's actually pretty good, it's visually gorgeous, and I think it has some interesting things to say about nostalgia and Arrested Development and older adults. Uh, that makes it sound like oatmeal. It's a slapdash action adventure fantasy film. But no, it's. I don't think Pixar can phone it in even when they're supposed to.
Touching on that nostalgia piece, we talked about Top Gun and how they really tapped into nostalgia, and that was an element that made it so successful. Why did that fall flat here for Pixar?
Because Lightyear, like Solo, which is also a solid 3-star movie, had nothing to offer audiences that weren't already on board for the pitch. Do you want to see a Buzz Lightyear movie? No. Okay, we got nothing else for you. That's all we got. Um, and I do think the film's overall reception was marred by the last 3 Pixar movies being sent straight to Disney Plus because of COVID and infection rates. The choice was eventually made to send Soul, which was supposed to come out in June of 2020 in theaters, as a Disney Plus premiere over Christmas weekend 2020. That's fine. I get it. Things, and it was very successful on Disney Plus. It's a very good movie. It still won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. They also did the same with Luca in the summer of 2020, even though I personally think that film would have done okay in theaters. That being said, it was very successful for Disney Plus.
Why were they doing this? Were they doing this because of the pandemic, or they didn't think it would be as successful in theater?
I think the official company line, all due respect, was it's the pandemic and,
Okay.
kids aren't vaccinated, yada yada yada. I believe they were doing it because they were prioritizing Disney Plus, and they wanted A-level content for Disney Plus. And the irony is there was a lot of talk, good-natured, good faith conversation about how Disney was treating Pixar poorly because they were being shunted off to Disney Plus instead of being given a theatrical release. I understand that sentiment. That being said, I would argue to a certain extent it was Pixar's A+ critical reputation that made it of prime value to be placed on the streaming service, which was of a higher priority for Disney at that moment in time, as opposed to theaters.
Did viewers knowing that it would be on Disney Plus so soon hurt its theatrical release?
I think it hurt it by a few bucks. And again, it's there's lots of little things that make slight paper cut type
Sure.
injuries. Like, I'm sure the online only controversy about the film's same-sex kiss between 2 married grandmas might have cost it hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars. But let's say, and I'm making this up to make a point, let's say that controversy cost the film $10 million in domestic grosses. It made 128, it was going to be made 118 million domestic. You throw in that $10 million and it still barely made more than The Good Dinosaur. So that controversy plays great for clicks, but general audiences don't care. How do we know they don't care? Because what they spent their money instead on Jurassic World Dominion, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and Thor: Love and Thunder, all 3 of which have supporting non-white female lesbian characters in supporting cast.
Directly refutes that point. Yeah.
But getting back to Lightyear, I do think the Disney Plus thing hurt because you're creating a perception among general moviegoers that a big Disney movie will be available for free, if you're a subscriber, for free in anywhere from 45 to 60 days.
So why spend all that money with you, your kids, the popcorn?
And they also pushed Turning Red to Disney Plus in the middle of March, which I thought was a terrible choice because yes, that we're still in a pandemic. Yes, there's still health concerns involved, but in terms of the marketplace, the Batman was making $370 million domestic right along in mid-March. And unfortunately, Turning Red got tagged with some ridiculous, again, online only, controversies about, oh no, it's a metaphor for puberty. It's so inappropriate for kids. Disney's grooming your children and other salacious nonsense. That because you didn't have box office grosses, because you didn't have Cinema Score, which is opening night polling the people that actually bought a ticket, as opposed to, Rotten Tomatoes user polls, which are opt-in, IMDb user polls that are opt-in and can be massaged by disingenuous actors. I'm shocked that Captain Marvel has such a low tomato score. I wonder what's going on. Spoiler, that often happens with films and television shows that are about non-white protagonists, non-hetero protagonists.
Okay.
And pretty much everyone knows that it's people, review bombing. That's what the term for it is. But Rotten Tomatoes instituted a system for the theatrical releases in early 2019, where in order to review rate the movie on Rotten Tomatoes, this is for users, not critics. You have to verify that you've bought a ticket on Fandango. So you actually have to have seen the film.
Oh, that's important verification.
There's no verified user thing.
Okay.
So not only...
So that gets tricky. That can get tricky.
Yeah, it's... So not only did Turning Red not go to theaters hurt it in terms of not making any money, it left it wide open to these disingenuous, scandalous, click-friendly online controversies with none of the usual tools to rebut that.
Do you think that should be a thought process on whether it's going directly to a streamer or a theatrical release, or no?
I would say no. It just made me mad.
A personal gripe, okay.
Because I know this stuff is nonsense. It's nonsense when the right-wing trolls, kvetch about Brie Larson and Captain Marvel, that Captain Marvel makes $1.1 billion. And for that matter, it's nonsense when, film Twitter, and I'm a part of that, and the more progressive wing of online film discourse, whines about Bohemian Rhapsody being problematic and why did, but then it goes on to win 4 Oscars and gross $905 million.
But speaking on that note, Gru went viral over the summer over their viral TikTok. Let me rephrase that. So Minions went viral this summer for a TikTok trend. Do you think that if Lightyear had a similar trend on social media, that would have helped it at all, or no?
Not over the long run. Might have gotten a few million more on opening weekend, and maybe. But here's the thing about... First of all, that was terrific. I loved seeing that. I love, after 2 years of people online, kids are never going back to the movies. Families are never going back to the movies. You have Minions, The Rise of Gru, that sets a new opening weekend milestone for an Independence Day opener with 128 million over 5 days. And you have a giant viral TikTok trend of what I assume are teenagers and, younger college students dressing up in suits and going to the movies and treating it as some kind of, tongue-in-cheek religious experience. Now, I love that because it rebuts conventional wisdom about, kids don't want to go to the movies anymore. But do I think it made a difference in terms of the grosses? No. Because A, that's still a very small part of the movie-going population. And B, the film didn't collapse. It was actually very leggy. It has made more money in North America than the first Minions did from a, over-under equal opening weekend. And if it had just been the hashtag Gentleman's Minions, moving the goal, pushing those grosses, you would have had the film collapse after its second weekend, but it didn't.
Okay.
That's a lot of the, without getting too far on the tangent here, a lot of the online conversation about film and television doesn't reflect either A, how regular moviegoers or television watchers feel about their content, and it doesn't reflect how they choose to, what they choose to watch and how they choose to watch it. For example, you're always hearing chatter online about spoiler culture and, this film did great because they want to learn about spoilers, or you got to, it's like Avengers Infinity War had the mother of all cliffhangers. But you know what? Everybody and their sister knew about that cliffhanger by the Saturday or Sunday of opening weekend. And that film did not remotely drop dead after a $258 million opening weekend. It kept going and going and going to 679 million domestic.
Why not? Is that because people will see it despite the spoiler, or they didn't see the spoiler at all?
Both. But they don't care.
They're still seeing it.
If you ask them on the street, they'd rather not know of the big plot twist before they see the movie.
Of course.
If it's something they want to see, they're not going to not show up. I mean, we have, everybody and their grandmother knew that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were showing up in Spider-Man No Way Home by the front.
Wait, they were? No, just kidding.
Well, it's on the new poster now, so it's not my fault. But nonetheless, that film was incredibly leggy, especially for a huge Christmas release. It made an $804 million domestic from a 260 opening weekend, even after the spoilers were front and center. Sing 2, Universal Sing 2, which opened a week later, that film legged out to 161 million. Domestic, which was more than The Secret Life of Pets 2, by the way, in non-COVID times, made 405 million worldwide, despite being available on PVOD for most of its run, and despite a marketing campaign that basically gives the whole film away in chronological order.
Like, people are still seeing it regardless of spoilers.
People are still seeing it regardless. If I think spoiler culture and how that is discussed is something that where online chitter chatter doesn't reflect the general consensus.